Hello, class of Craig McKinney. I'm not really sure what the class is called, but he got in touch with me and said that you guys read Americus for class, and he forwarded along some questions you guys had. And a lot of them were really great questions, and they kind of covered the whole spectrum as far as like how did we make the book, what was the process, kind of some of the themes about the book, and things like that. And I was hoping that MK would be here and she would be able to do this video answer with me, but she wasn't able to make it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about the process of making Americus, and because I think that'll be something fun for you guys to see, because a lot of you might not know how comics or graphic novels get made, and also it's just something that I think will be a little bit easier for me to talk about. So anyhow, a little background is that as far as doing our own comics, MK and I had never really met before. We were doing our own mini comics or zines, and basically someone in Portland who publishes a small anthology called Paper Cutter, Tugboat Press, he had always wanted to work with MK, and he's always wanted to work with me. And he kind of had this idea of doing this like serialized story in Paper Cutter, because most of them are just short stories from different cartoonists. And anyhow, he thought that working with the both of us would be a way to kill two birds with one stone. And MK is really a writer, but she still draws her own comics, but her strength is really in writing. And I had never worked with a writer before, and so he was afraid that we might not want to work with another person because it would be a new process for both of us. But we were both game, and there was something about our comics and that the characters, even though we do two completely different types of comics, a common theme that was in both of them was that all the main characters were kind of dumb, kind of very self-centered, and kind of annoying and clueless to the world that was happening around them. And I think that translated well in Americus. But alright, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about... So basically, MK lives in New York, and I lived in Portland. And so how did we go about doing it? Basically, what would happen is MK would write a chapter, and then she would send a script to me. And the script would go through some editing with Greg Moons, who is the publisher of Tugboat Press, and he was kind of just... he would check over and make sure things were okay, and I would kind of get a rough draft and see if there was anything major that I thought might needed to be changed. But then MK would send a script, which looked something like this. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe I'll try to get a little closer. But you can see it's just kind of typed out, and it just kind of explains, let me see if I can read it, page by page, panel by panel, what is happening in the panel. So I can read this. Panel 1, or page 1, panel 1, Americus Town Hall. The parking lot should be visible and the street and lot should be filled with cars. And basically what would happen is I would get this, then I would draw it, and then they would look at it and edit it and see if I needed to change anything. But even though it was sent in an email, I draw everything by hand. You can see my drafting table is here. It's actually a light box built into a drafting table, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But what happened is it was really important for me to print these scripts out, and because as you can see, I'll try to show you. You can see I put little doodles, and I would lay the page out how I'd want it, and basically all you can see me doing this on all of the pages. And here I'm basically just thumbnailing, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term, but it's basically kind of roughing out what the page will look like, how the page will be laid out, what I'll be putting in each panel, just this way so I don't have to, when I'm drawing it a large size, I've kind of done all the problem solving here, so I don't have to worry about it when I'm drawing bigger, because if I mess with it when I'm drawing bigger, it just wastes time. So here, the idea being that I can work out all the problem solving. And so basically, it was really important for me to get this hard copy so I can make doodles and do this, whether like maybe while I'm eating breakfast or on the bus or something, and just so I could read over and get an idea of what would be happening. And then basically I'd pencil the page, Unfortunately, I don't have any pencils with me because I just ink over them. And so here is an example of, well, let me get a different page. Here's an example of like a finished page. And you can see it's much larger than what the book gets printed to. That's kind of standard for comics. Everything looks better shrunk down. And also, this gives me more space to draw, because drawing to the size of the book would be really hard to get all that tiny detail and stuff like that. And so, sorry, I'm just trying to walk myself through what the process is. So basically, I do draw by hand. I use a brush, and I have it here. I use a brush and India ink. And so I try to do as much as I can by hand. And then I would scan this into the computer, and then what happened is I'd do some digital touch-ups. Because the thing about comics, too, is what matters is the finished page. What gets sent to the printer. How you get there doesn't matter. And so I'd have to do corrections. And sometimes a correction, like here's an example. I don't know, I know you guys just read it last week or whatever, but this is a scene where we are kind of introduced to the character JL. And she's kind of the mean girl in French class that kind of scares Neil a little bit, but he likes her dresses and everything. But regarding this page, something that happened, just a good example of the editing process, is that when I drew her, it had been so long since I did the character designs that I kind of forgot what she looked like. And when I drew her, and she's supposed to be, like I said, kind of this mean, I mean, you guys read it, so you know, but kind of this grumpy character who's kind of isolated and does her own thing. And a big part of that is, as far as character designs, is when I initially drew this page, I gave her this kind of cutesy haircut. And it just didn't work for the character. Because it had been months when I did the initial character designs, and so this is something that both NK and Greg caught, and were like, you know what, you messed up on that, you need to go back and fix it. So I had to like look at the original character designs, oh yeah, like a big thing was her hair, and how it needed to be like longer, and kind of uncut and kind of wild and crazy. And so basically what I had to do is I took what's called like marker paper. And marker paper is kind of like a nicer tracing paper in that it can take ink, because if you try to put ink on tracing paper, it will kind of buckle, just because it can't hold it. It's not thick enough. And so what I would have to do is I just had to take this page and take the marker paper over it and redraw the hair into what it was supposed to look like. And I had to do that for every instance that I messed up drawing JL and her hair. And once I drew this out, basically what I do is I could go into the computer, digitally delete in Photoshop all the messed up hair, and then I would drop this new hair in as a new layer, and then just kind of fix up the lines around it and everything, and then boom, it's the final page that you see in the book. And so again, you can see that like this original page is messed up, and I'm doing corrections on another sheet of paper. That doesn't really, again, the process doesn't matter. It's just what gets sent to the printer, because that's kind of what you see. Comics are meant to be reproduced. They're not meant to be hung in like a museum or a gallery to see, to look at them. Though it's kind of cool to see the originals and to see the process and everything like that. So that's kind of the process. I'm trying to think of some other questions you guys had. You'll also, just to show you some examples of, here's some other pages that had the originals just look so much different than the what was the final product. And you know, I'm sure you noticed in the Apathia sequences we did like a gray tone, and the reason for that was we kind of wanted to have this idea, because one of the themes is just the love of books and how books affect people's lives. And so as you notice in Americus, whenever anyone reads the Apathia Ravenchild book, we kind of actually drew the sequences out that they're reading. And we actually did like a gray tone on them, as opposed to just the stark black and white of the real world. And that is just sort of a way to like show how sometimes reading a book can take you into a new world and can be just really vivid, and sometimes more vivid than the world that you live in, because you get to use your imagination. And so that was kind of how we stressed that. And one of the questions I think you guys asked was, why did we choose black and white? A big thing of that was they said that we could do color, but at the time we got picked up by our publisher First Second, I had already drawn a good lot of the book, and I had already done my drawing thinking that it would be black and white. And my style is very clean line and crisp, and I think that coloring would have worked well. But another major factor of why we just chose to stick it to black and white was the time. If we were to have it colored, it probably wouldn't come out for another year. And I just, after spending like 2 or 3 years drawing it, I just wanted to see it on the shelf as fast as I could. And I think it still works really well, black and white. And also it helps keep the price down. So I think it would have been another like $4 if it was, so it'd end up being like $20 if it was in color. And again, just it's aimed at teens, and so that way it just keeps the price down a little bit so that more people can afford to buy it. And so I think that's all the process. Again, I know it's hard to do the Q&A with you guys not here and me just kind of talking, but hopefully they answer some questions. And I know there were some questions as far as like, do I have an illustration degree or what my background is. I actually did go to school for comics. I went to the Savannah College of Art and Design, and I started out there as an illustration major, but a couple courses into illustration I just realized I didn't like it. But I didn't know what to do because I like to draw, but I didn't like illustration. And a friend of mine kind of talked to me and said, hey, I'm studying comics, you might like it, you'd like to tell stories, you'd like to draw. And I hadn't really had a whole lot of experience with comics, and I was kind of worried. I was like, this is a dumb idea, going to college to study comics. But I ended up taking a couple classes, and I really fell in love with it. And I really can't see myself doing anything else. Americus is my first book, and I'm working on my second one now, which has been a totally different process because working with a writer, you kind of take some things for granted. Like, basically, I don't have to come up with the ideas. I just have to do the problem solving of what the page will look like, how do I want to tell the story. And so it's definitely been a different challenge writing my own book. But I think I learned a lot from Americus, so I have a leg up as opposed to if I were to just do this from scratch. And so yeah, MK and I basically worked through email the whole way. And what we would do is, I'm sorry, I'm jumping back and forth, but when I would scan a page and put it up, we basically just did it on a Blogspot blog, and we just made it private, so only I could read it, MK could read it, and our editor Greg could read it. And they would basically leave comments that said, oh, this drawing, like, this panel looks funny, or this panel looks great, go ahead. And we just did that chapter by chapter. And in one of the readings I did, someone asked if MK and I had ever actually talked on the phone, and it's something that I didn't think about it until someone asked that question. But it's funny, it took 3 years to make Americus, and I don't think once it occurred to either of us to call each other and talk on the phone. We did everything by email. And so it's an interesting process. And I mean, the internet is something that really makes it kind of closes those distance gaps between creatives. And that's the nice thing about doing comics and illustration, is that I could be anywhere. I could be in Alaska and be doing it because of the internet. So I think that's it. Sorry I rambled a little bit, and I hope this answers some of your questions. And I've never done one of these before, so hopefully it went well and you guys learned a thing or two. Thanks for having me, Craig, and thanks for reading Americus, you guys. Please tell anyone that you liked it. And don't forget to read banned books. Banned Book Week is coming up in September, and that's pretty much the reason we made Americus, is to champion banned books and to just spread the love of reading. So, alright, hope you guys have a good class. Bye.